For about the last couple of years now, the biggest contenders in the smart speaker market has been Amazon and Google, but it looks like we're finally getting a strong third competitor. Hey guys, it's John V here with PhoneArena, and this is a review of the Apple HomePod. We know that Apple isn't the first to venture in this budding segment of smart speakers, but you know expectations are going to be riding high with the HomePod. Now, when we first take a look at the HomePod, it flaunts the distinctive outlines and aesthetics that we're accustomed to seeing when it comes to speaker designs. It has this rounded cylindrical shape, almost double the size of the Google Home speaker. It's not grossly out of proportion, nor is it tiny, but if you're used to the space-saving size of the Google Home speaker, then you might be shocked by how much more room the HomePod will occupy in the same area. The entire thing is adorned with this mesh-like fabric material. We've seen this implemented in other speakers, and we do like how it gives it a very natural texture. However, we're a bit concerned because it gives the speaker this almost spongy-like feel, and we're kind of curious to know how it's going to hold up over time. Now, if you're a cat owner, just beware, because with that mesh material, they might like the feel of it, so they might mistake the HomePod as a scratching post of some kind. It's already happened with our speaker, so just be careful about that. Along the top of the speaker, it features a touch-sensitive surface that's commonly referred to as a display, along with LED backlit volume up and down buttons. Now, this display is used to do one thing, and that's basically for Siri to listen and respond, and it's done by showing these dynamic looking color swirls. It's cool looking for the first few times, but we wish that this display could do and show more things. Apple has engineered a very impressive speaker because of all the hardware that's packed into its frame. For starters, it features a 4-inch high excursion subwoofer with a custom amplifier that channels sound through the top of the speaker. It also features a 6 microphone array around the middle, and it's all supported by these 7 beamforming tweeters on the bottom. The biggest complaint we have about the design of the HomePod is that the fabric-wrapped power cord isn't detachable. Therefore, if the cord goes bad for some odd reason, it means having to replace the entire speaker, as opposed to just the cord, like what you find on other speakers. Setting up the HomePod was actually a breeze. We just plugged it to the wall, it turned on, and we brought our iPhone X nearby and automatically detected it. The one thing we really need to stress is that the only devices supported by the HomePod are iOS devices. So if you don't have an iPhone, an iPad, or an iPod Touch, then you're out of luck. It doesn't support Android smartphones. Obviously, the driving force behind the HomePod's capabilities is Siri. So all you gotta do is just say the key phrase, "Hey Siri," and automatically will turn on. We like that it's pretty responsive. Even if you're playing a song at a very loud volume, it's able to hear that. Being a voice assistant service, you could ask Siri all sorts of questions and commands, like what's the weather on a particular day, how tall is Michael Jordan. It could perform mathematical conversions, and you could even ask it some obscure questions. Hey Siri, can you give me a recap of last week's Super Bowl game?
The NFL season is over. The Eagles bested the Patriots in the Super Bowl by a score of 41-33 last Sunday.
You could set alarms, you could ask it to read text messages, but when we compare its functionality against something else, like Google Assistant with the Google Home speaker, it pales in comparison. One of the biggest drawbacks for me with the HomePod is that Siri isn't as intelligent as you'd think. And seriously, that's a problem. Who was the MVP of that game?
I can't get the answer to that on HomePod.
It's just not as intelligent. It becomes very clear when you ask Siri a follow-up question. You would think that Siri's smart enough to know what you're asking based on contextual clues from the previous question, but it doesn't. Being a connected smart speaker and all, you could use the HomePod to control other connected devices in the home. We managed to connect a few different Philips Hue light bulbs to the HomePod, so now we could essentially tell Siri to turn on specific lights and change their colors. However, that was the only thing we were able to connect. That's because it doesn't support each and every smart device at the home. And that's not a problem with just the HomePod. It's a problem with all of these smart speakers. For example, I have a couple of Piper security cameras at home. I also have the Logi Circle camera and even a Ring video doorbell outside, but none of them are supported by HomeKit. But to be fair too, Google Home doesn't support them either. So they're all playing on the same playing field. While it's great that Apple is finally in the smart speaker business, the HomePod definitely needs a lot more tweaking and learning before it'll be able to hang tight with the likes of Amazon's Alexa and even Google's Assistant. In its current iteration, the HomePod is at a distant third. The chip inside the HomePod is the Apple A8 processor and analyzes the HomePod's surroundings to deliver the most optimal audio experience. So whether it's sprawled out on a table in the middle of an open room or tucked away in the corner hidden away from view, the HomePod leverages all of its complex technologies to intelligently adapt to the conditions. And that's the beauty of the HomePod, because no matter where it's positioned, it just works really well. But when it comes to audio quality, you won't be disappointed. The first standout with the audio performance of the HomePod is the raw power behind its punch. It packs a wallop in a way that you can sometimes feel how the audio reverberates off your body. Even at the loudest volume setting, there's no hint of distortion or crackling, although the bass output seems less pronounced at this level. Beyond that, we're really impressed by the fullness of its audio output. The rumble from the bass tastefully complements the mids and highs, which are rich and clear at all volume levels. Quite frankly, there's no comparing the audio performance out of the HomePod versus something like the Google Home speaker. So if you thought the Google Home speaker sounded really well, you'll be blown away by the HomePod. We mentioned earlier that you need an iOS device to use the HomePod, but on top of that, the HomePod itself taps into Apple Music as its default music platform. This is a problem because it doesn't support other music services. So if you're using something like Google Play Music, you won't be able to access it through the HomePod. However, we did check out Pandora, and that seems to work. You could use AirPlay to stream music to it. But there are still a lot of shortcomings with the HomePod. For example, if you ask it to play a song on YouTube, it won't do it. It just can't. With Apple's entrance onto the scene with its HomePod speaker, they're definitely going at it with a totally different approach and strategy. We already know some of its limitations and areas of opportunity, but what's arguably its biggest hurdle to overcome is its pricey cost. At a whopping $350, it's isolating its potential reach, making it more of a buy for audio aficionados than trying to permeate through the masses. To Apple's credit though, they designed a speaker that's incredibly rich, sharp, and undeniably powerful with its audio performance. So in that regard, they definitely hit it out of the park. Still, the expensive cost of the HomePod is a limiting factor that'll be reserved for those who have the disposable income to pick it up. Then again, you'll also have to factor in some of Siri's inabilities. That's just another thing to think about when sizing up its value. So if you guys want to learn more about the HomePod or anything else I talked about in this video, you can check out our website, PhoneArena.com. It's John V, signing off.